Okay, so we've been talking about how to create a startup, we've been talking about exit, but one of those things that is so important in a startup is startup culture. I was gonna say, there we go. No worries. No. I was like, so with us on stage now, we have Therese, who is the founder of 30 Minutes MBA, and we will talk more about culture, which is one of those things that I sometimes think startups kind of forget about. So big applause.
Thank you. How are you guys doing? Right. So culture can be designed, but it takes the decision to design it, and to design it well. My name is Therese Gedda, and I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years. I founded my first business when I was 17, and I've been working with founders and startups for over 15 years. And today I run my own startup, 30 Minute MBA, and I tour the world speaking about culture and mindset. And I've seen so many founders, so many startups thriving and dealing with hardships. All of us, all founders and people that have been part of a startup, know how challenging the entrepreneurial roller coaster is. So I'm going to invite you to a journey, to take a leap of faith, to see how culture can serve you. So I said that it starts with the decision. And there is a reason why only 15% globally are engaged in their workplace. And the number isn't that much higher in Sweden. Partly because we have used an old model to build companies. And the old model is putting profit first, then the customers, then the people. But this is not the model of the future. This is not the model of how we can build thriving startups, where people profit and our customers really thrive. So I'm going to challenge you to think about another way of doing it. But this model makes money. And one example is Ryanair. It's an airline that most people know about, probably all of you, and they have used that model. But as I said, this is a model of the past. So let's look for the future. Another airline called Southwest Airlines. And that's one of the most beloved airlines in the world. And they have made profit for over 40 years. And during 9/11, they got cards from their customers, wishing them well and telling them that we are here for you, we still care about you. Imagine that, a company receiving cards, checks, and love from their customers and their people, to the extent that when the industry is going through a hardship, they are there for them. So they had the purpose, the idea of democratizing the airwaves already in the 70s. And technically, Ryanair is a carbon copy of Southwest Airlines. The difference is culture. So what does Southwest Airlines do so differently, and why are they so successful? And how can we learn from that? They flipped the model. They put people first. They hire cheerleaders, and then they train them to be flight stewardess and flight attendants. And when you have people that love their job, they are coming up every day to do their best, the customer service is phenomenal. And what that does lead to? A lot of profit. As I said, 40 years of profits all over. And this is the foundation, this is the future, how we build companies that really thrive long term. So when you have this choice as a founder, why would you use the old model? And And also as investors, why would you go with the old model when we know that that leads to a global engagement rate of 15%? So when you make the decision of going for people, customers, and then profit, how do you do that? Well, that's what we're going to explore. So number one, why do you do what you do? What's the purpose of why you do what you do? Because when you share what you believe in, what you truly believe in, other people that believe in what you believe in would join you. They would join you as team members, customers, fans, and they will cheer you on. Southwest Airlines had democratizing the airwaves. And we at 30 Minute MBA have empowering individuals to reach their full potential. What's your purpose? Why do you do it? So when you have the purpose, instead of doing the roll-up with the words, I'm sure you all have seen them. You see roll-ups with words like teamwork and collaboration. But what does that really mean? Values is not just words, it's how we communicate, it's how we relate. And culture comes down to how we collaborate and change the future and change the world for the better. But as I said, it can be designed, but it's based on the decision. So when you have values that really matters to you as a single founder or multiple founders, and when you start to apply that to your culture, and we're going to go into how you will use it in a moment, that's when the magic starts to happen. And there's a lot of examples of that today. But it's important that it's your values. I've met so many founders that when they come together, they have a passion for an idea, and they have a good business idea, they have a good business model, but they forget why they do what they do. They forget to talk about their goals and their values, the kind of culture they want to create, especially if they're coming from the corporate world and are used to the 9 to 5. The idea of building a company on a traditional old model is not really a success recipe, is it? And we, as a startup community, have the opportunity of really changing how culture is designed. So you have the purpose, you know why you do what you do, you have your values. So the next step before we move on is that you need to put that into something. A manifesto, a cultural guide, a video, it doesn't matter. And I can tell you that this can take you a long time or no time. It comes down to how committed you are to building that thriving company long term and enjoy the journey. Because as previous speakers pointed out, being a founder and being in a startup is damn hard. And the journey is not easier if we don't have a well-defined culture and a culture that supports each other. So when you have the manifesto, what happens next? When is the last time something blew your mind? What's the most daring thing you ever done? What does generosity mean to you? You know, 1 out of 10 of the most popular questions when it comes to recruitment is completely useless. And the 3 questions I just asked you, they're just 3 of the questions we ask candidates when they apply to join our company. Because the core of recruiting on culture is to find that cultural fit. And it's so much more than the feeling. Obviously, it's important that you feel really, really good when you're with someone, but there's more to it. And it's a lot more than just the talent. Just looking at the talent is not sufficient long term. Because culture is also fragile. It's something we build together. Every time we invite a new person into our company, we're boosting it, but we're also making it more volatile. So not having a model of recruiting and culture can be devastating. And a lot of the stories I hear from founders is that they recruited the wrong person. And recruiting the wrong person is expensive, but for a startup, it's not just expensive, it can be devastating. But we need to have a model for it, because it's all well and good to say that you should recruit on culture. So how do you do that? Well, the essence, the foundation of recruiting on culture is a cultural test, and this comes down to your values. So I can give you how to do it, but the fundamentals of it is that you use the values and you design questions that reflect what you believe in. And in this way, you're also showing the candidates what your culture is all about. So the first question, as I mentioned, when is the last time something blew your mind? When we ask that, we're not really asking for their stories. We're asking for their mindset. Are they sharing something positive? Are they sharing something negative? Are they talking about that wonderful moment with their little kid in the park? Or when they were hang gliding? Or when they started their first business and got their first client? Or are they talking about all the horrible things that happen in the world? Because if you're positive or negative oriented, that's not easy to change. And one of our values is about being a positive giver. So if you're not positive, you're not going to enjoy our culture. So why would you work with a person like that? So the cultural test and recruiting on culture is both for you as a company as well as the candidates. Engagement has basically 4 parts to it. And one of them, or what drives engagement, has 4 pieces to it. And one of them is people, obviously. So what drives engagement for people? We know that there's a couple of things, but 2 of them is autonomy and learning. Having room for personal and professional development in your work and applying what you know. Having the freedom, and that's where the autonomy comes in, to apply the lessons. And if you train on culture, if you make room for learners, people that are passionate about developing themselves, people with a growth mindset, your company also have the opportunity of creating magic in a way that is hard to even believe. And I met some founders that are super passionate about learning, and they are constantly learning on the go. They are using podcasts and books, and they're going to conferences like this, and they're constantly learning new things. And this is partly why we founded 30-Minute MBA, which is all about developing your business skills on the go and supporting you with that behavioral change. But there's also people in our dear community that thinks that, being in a startup is so demanding and I'm learning so much as it is. Why do I need to invest even more in myself and my team to learn? Yes, I know, it's surprising, but I've heard it more than once. And the problem with that is the opportunity cost of not learning is massive, and more importantly, that you're risking to lose your high performers, your high achievers in your team if you don't give them the opportunity to learn. So learning is a core element of a thriving culture. But there's more to the story. When you raise capital, you suddenly have this demand of hitting certain numbers and targets. And that's all well and good. But I believe that we need to make sure that we measure on culture too. And I can't tell you exactly what to measure because it comes down to your values. But when I can tell you that if you have 3 elements, like you measure on culture, one example could be the numbers of high fives you share and receive during a week. That could actually be a number that you measure. And you can measure on customers. How you make a difference for your customers. How you get that wow from them, if that's in line with your values. And then you can measure on growth, and that's more a traditional way of measuring on revenue, which is also important, of course, but it's not everything. There's so much more to the story. And if we connect learning to measurements, it's even more likely that people are really going to feel that learning is part of the company culture and the core of it. And I want to talk a little bit about the environment, because you can also use space to promote your culture. And you don't need to be Google or Spotify to do this. You can be 3 girls or guys in the basement, it doesn't matter. But know that your environment or our environment influences us so much. It can spark creativity, or it could make us feel lonely and stuck. So use the office, use wherever you're working together to the benefit of you and the company, whatever is important to you. But remember also to seek out places and times to work where and when you are creative. One of the Nobel Prizes this year got to a researcher that talked about body clock. And I'm a big fan of speaking about body clocks, because the idea that we are all wired to be morning people, larks, and to work best during mornings is a myth. So it's important to invite your people, when you design that culture, to work both when and where they are creative, but also work during hours that fits their own body clock. Because that's how we get that magic, that's how we get that spark. If I'm asked to do something before 8 a.m., I'm a New York time, I'm an owl, you're not going to get good results from me. If you ask me to do it 8 at night or 2 in the morning, not a problem. So it's not only a nicety, it's also from a productivity perspective massively different in the result and the feeling and the output you get from something. So working where and when you are creative, combined to have a workplace that feels like home, that is in line with those values we talked about, that supports those values, really brings the team closer together. And it also shows to new candidates that want to join your company what your company is all about, because our environment demonstrates that. And I spoke about that engagement has 4 pieces to it. I said people, we also have technology, processes, and finally, environment. So it's not just that the environment is nice, it also drives engagement. But as I said in the beginning, it basically comes down to one thing, that decision of building the future company, using the new model, putting people first, customers, and profit. Because when you do that full out, you're not only profitable, but you're changing the world to the better. And we're touching upon that triple bottom line. But this starts with us as founders, leaders, because we are the cultural barrier, or we are barriers of the culture. We are the ambassadors. And even if culture is something that we all create together, and everyone is crucial for that. In a startup, as you know, every individual, everything counts, because there is no room to just slack a day. We don't have that luxury, regardless if we are on the E round of funding or if you just started out. There's always more to do, and there's always tasks that is around, more opportunities that you can pursue, magic you can create. And it's so easy to overlook the importance of culture. But culture in its core, it's all about how we relate to each other and how we are creating this startup and how we're bringing that to the world and who we have with us on this journey. The fans, the customers, our people, our investors, if we have some. But culture can be designed, but it starts with that decision of making a priority. Thank you so much.